So I've been working on this full print cover for one of my books, and I'm about to start the back, and we really need to talk about what you need to put on the back of your book cover, because a lot of authors, they don't know, and you might want to just have a short description, but this is really your sales copy. So you need to think about everything that's on the back cover, and it all has to have a purpose. Um, for most of your books, you're going to be selling online on Amazon or another online bookstore, and they're never actually going to see the back cover. Um, Most of the time on Amazon, they're just going to see the front cover, so you don't want to hide any elements that really are essential for the sale of the book. You don't want to hide them on the back cover. But also, whatever you do put on the back cover is probably also what you're going to put on the sales copy for Amazon, because you want everything that's really essential to drive the sale. So we'll play with a few things that you want to have, and I'll discuss some things that you want to avoid with your back cover. The first thing that most people will skip actually is the the category, which should be up here on the top somewhere. So I'm just going to grab this text layer, which looks like this, and I'm going to say sci-fi. I could have science fiction, I could have fantasy. Dystopia is popular, so I might write dystopia. This doesn't matter so much if you're self-publishing, because you're not going to really focus on being in bookstores anyway. If you were in bookstores, this is really important to tell bookstores where to stock your book, in what category, on which shelf it fits in. But even if you're not in bookstores, having it up here on the top where it's supposed to be will make your book look more professional. So you don't just want to skip it because you don't know where it should go. You can usually just pick the same category that you're going to use on Amazon. So you should know when you're publishing, is it going to be science fiction? Is it going to be dystopia, adventure? You should kind of have an idea already of what category your book is going to be in. And then you can just pick that category. It doesn't have to be very big. Sometimes you don't really want it to stand out. It should be there, but it shouldn't draw attention. So I might even change the color so it's just a little bit darker. I could make it super small. I could space it out a little more. Not that much. I also want to make sure that my text box is about evenly centered between these orange lines on the side. It's close, but it's not quite there. It's kind of hard to see right now, but once I paste in the text, that'll be a lot easier. As far as the text goes, I drafted a little bit. I don't have very much. I don't have a great sales copy because I haven't finished this book yet. So your sales copy, even for myself, it's hard to write your own sales copy. So even if you think it's pretty great, you should always get more help or send it to an editor. There's only 300 words of text. It's not very much. I was going to see how many words it is. Yeah, almost 209. It can be about 300 words, 200 to 300 words to fit on the back of your cover. So you don't want a lot. What you don't want is a huge summary of everything that happens in the book. Sometimes I've seen them that are like 1,000 words, 2,000 words. That's not what you want. Your book cover, the back cover, is just sales copy. So you want something exciting that catches the attention, but you don't want a plot summary that tells everything that's going to happen in the book. And you also usually want some kind of a call out. Oops. And by call out, here I'm just going to grab some of this so we can start playing with it. So I'll go back to my text box. I'm using Isbn on the back, which is just a simple serif font that I like. I use for a lot of back cover stuff. Oops. I should have done this first. Just make sure that it's not all capitals. And I'll also want to change the paragraph spacing, so I don't really want, it could be centered, but you don't really want it left aligned. And actually I don't prefer centering for most books. I like justified, which would look like this. Depending on how much room you have, you don't have to leave, I'll zoom in a little. You don't have to leave gaps between the paragraphs like this. I could bring one of these up and indent it instead. There's a little bit too much spacing, so I might bring that down. And it doesn't have to be spread out like that either. So what I was trying to say earlier about a call-out box, or a call-out, you might want something like this that's much bigger at the top. Just one sentence that catches your attention. It can be a nice question, like a leading question, something that plays with the theme. So I put, how much of yourself can you change before you become someone else? That's kind of what the book is about. You've got to have a little bit of space up here, but depending on what text you have, you're going to figure out how you can fit it all together. So this first part is actually not a description. This is some of the text I pulled out of the preface of the book, which I don't have to put there, but I'm just playing right now. And I want something that looks a little bit more technical or sci-fi. I'm going to choose rubato. The other thing is, this is a sort of a young adult dystopian post-apocalyptic type of techno-thriller. I guess it's a techno-thriller. So you're going to have to make some choices based on whether you're trying to appeal to teenagers or adults. And so if it's a young adult or if it's more of a kid's book, then I could have bigger text like this. I probably have to choose. I can't really make... I have this little description here, which is short but kind of good enough. And I also have this selection that I pulled out of my preface. It's a little awkward to put both at the same time. I'm going to leave it there anyway, I think. But normally you'd have to make a choice, because having like this call out and this from my preface and then this summary, there's just too much going on. It's too confusing. So I'd have to make some choices. Then I also put a bio down here because a lot of authors will say they don't want an author bio on the back of their book. That's sort of a mistake, because if I don't have an author bio, let me duplicate this. What I don't want to have is not enough stuff on the back. For example, if I only had this, then I might be tempted to make this a lot bigger. Oops. And then maybe spread it out so it fills all the backspace. And that's kind of like, it just makes it kind of obvious that I didn't have enough stuff to put on the back. So I had to kind of cheat by putting in all this text. I also want to be careful. I'm going to add a drop shadow so you can see it a little better. You don't want a really heavy drop shadow like this. If you have a drop shadow, you want it to be spread out enough that you can't really see it. So it's sort of there, but it's not really obvious. So this is what a lot of authors would have. A lot of self-publishing authors, they would have something that looks like this, and there's just not enough stuff to make it look professional. You don't want to have it crammed with information. You don't want to have it too busy either. But there are certain things that should be on a book, and so you want to make sure you have those things. The other thing I'd watch out for with my copy here is words that break with a hyphen. So you may have to play around with the size of the font, or you may have to break some paragraphs in different places, or maybe change the spacing on a few lines so it justifies better. I don't like having hanging words either. It's not the end of the world, but if you can avoid it, I can probably do this and it'll work. You kind of have to play around before you'll find a way that it all fits. It still doesn't quite fit. You can even do this like a half. So that took a little bit of playing, but now it all fits. So I could have something like that. This is fine. This is a decent summary of the book. It's not super. And like I said, I would get it edited. I would hire a professional. I just saw a friend of mine. I won't be able to find it now. But Brian, I'll add the link down below. He just started a service where he will write your sales description for you for really cheap. And that's a good deal. You can pay someone, you can pay a really great editor to try to make it better, because this sales copy, besides your cover, the sales copy is really going to be the thing that sells the book. So it's got to be super good. The reviews are really important as well, but the sales copy is really important. So you want to spend some money to make sure your sales copy is as good as it can be. So I might start with this. The other thing you want is reviews. A lot of bigger publishing houses. I can also move this over a little now that I can see where the text is. I can center it a little bit so it's the right edge, the right distance away from these. A lot of publishing houses, they won't even use any sales copy. They'll just use reviews. They'll just use like 5 reviews from other best-selling authors, because those reviews help more than really good sales copy. In some cases. Depends who the author is. The thing about reviews is you want the reviews to say everything that needs to be said about the book, but not to just say fluff or positive things, or not to overstate. A nice use of reviews. It's tempting. The mistake that a lot of self-publishing authors make is they might say something like, let me zoom in. They might say something like, Selfie is a fantastic, fast-paced So you might be tempted to say something like this in your description. But you shouldn't, because it'll come across as bragging or self-promotional or flagrant. People won't really believe it. If you put it on the back of your cover, because they know that you wrote the back cover copy or somebody did. I don't know. I mean, you can. It doesn't look that bad if you add big text and make it a call out like that. However, this kind of stuff where it just says this is a great book, you should buy it, it won't work as well in the text, but it works really well as a quote. So if you can get another author, and it's easy to do, you can just reach out to other authors, other self-publishing or indie authors who have self-published books in your category, in your genre, even if they're not best-selling, even if they're not very well known. Having them give you a quote to put on the back of your book is good for both of you, because you can have them give you something that looks really good and helps sell your book, but it's also good promotion for them, because every time you sell a book, you're promoting them and their book. So if you ask some other authors to help you by trading blurbs like this, it's really good for both of you. But my point is just, it's better to have a review than it is to have just copy that says, this book is really good, you should buy it, because it's not very believable if it's just in the sales copy. So I might put something there. And so finally, I'm going to move this up. Get some reviews if you can. You can always add more reviews later. You can even just, after you publish, and that's why I usually publish the ebook first. I might leave the ebook up a couple months and get some reviews. After you have reviews, you can just take and edit a section of your review, any review, and just add Amazon reviewer. This is totally fair. I usually like to make this all caps and a little bit smaller. So something like that. This looks really great, and it just came from an Amazon review. You can just wait till you have enough natural reviews on Amazon and just pick something that somebody said that sounds good. You can usually edit it. You can't change the words or make things up, but if you pick out pieces of the review, because reviews are usually longer, if you just pick out better words, or even, for example, if they wrote a big long paragraph and I want to just edit it down to a couple words, like this, that's usually fine. I'm going to make that a little smaller so it all fits. So that's a pretty nice, little blurb that I can put on the back that I just pulled from somebody reviewing my book on Amazon. So the other part you're going to want is your author bio. And with the author bio, I'll usually just duplicate this same Word text box, but then I'll move it over a little bit for the picture. You don't have to put in author picture. You could just have the author bio at the bottom. I do think you should have an author bio, because this back cover copy, it's for people who haven't read the book yet. This back cover copy is sales copy. So it's different. A lot of authors will say, oh, but I already have my picture and my bio on the inside of the book, so I don't need it on the back cover. But actually, the cover, the bio and the copy on the inside of the book, most people aren't going to read that. That's just for people who have already bought the book and they finished the book and then they want to learn more about the author. That's the place where you can try to build a stronger relationship with them by telling them more about yourself. On the back cover copy, you need something that helps sell the book. And because even if they don't buy the book, maybe they just pick it up and they look at it for a minute and they never see it again. At least if you have your name and your picture on the back, you'll get a little bit of name recognition. So if you have a bunch of books, maybe they'll start to notice your name or your face because they start seeing your stuff. That's kind of what you want to have. And so you also want to put a bio on the back that's very short and helps sell the book. It's tricky. I'll show you, I just set up this site for my fiction. And so I have this about the author section, which is fine, a decent bio. This is fine for the back of the book on the inside. This is kind of a two-paragraph biography, and then some more about me and some other stuff. But you can't fit all that stuff on the back of the book, and it's not really going to make as much sense because this is a really general thing about why I write fiction. And on the back of this book, I only want something that makes me an expert for this particular book. It helps sell this book. It doesn't help me sell all my other books. So you kind of have to edit something together. In this one, I just said, Derek Murphy has a PhD in philosophy and literature, is fascinated with the integration of technology and biology in modern medicine, and keeps a close eye on nanotechnology, robotics, and artificial intelligence. His novels tease out some of the dire implications these applications may have on blah, 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 the future of humanity. That's fine. It's kind of too long. And the other interesting thing is, even though I have a PhD in philosophy and literature, that's not totally relevant for this book. This is probably like a young adult techno-thriller book. It doesn't really matter if I have a PhD in philosophy and literature. It only matters if the writing is any good. And if the writing, isn't good, then the PhD is worse even. It might help to sell the book if I was writing nonfiction. I'd want to have it there if it was research-based. But because this is fiction, I don't think putting a PhD is even very important. So I'm actually just going to delete that whole part because I want to keep this pretty short too. So I can say, is fascinated with the integration of technology and biology in modern medicine. I'm going to delete this part. And say, his novels tease out some of the dire implications these applications have for the future of humanity. So that's better because it's shorter. You don't have to say very much about yourself. You want to just have one or two sentences to say something about yourself. I could say he's from Portland, Oregon, or he lives in Taiwan, or whatever, but you want to only write the stuff that's going to appeal to your target readers of this particular book and make them interested enough to actually maybe flip inside the book and start reading the first couple chapters. But that's all. And your author bio really isn't that important unless you're writing nonfiction and you're building an author-based platform where your story is really important, then you would have a longer author bio. But if for fiction, you really don't want something too long. I'm also going to throw in a picture. You don't have to have a picture, but I think it's a good idea. You can make it pretty small. And I'm just going to put it over here. I could even crop this down and make it smaller. So I like to have my back cover look something like that. The spacing isn't perfect yet. I'd probably want to make this different colors so it stands out a little bit. I kind of like this lime color, this greenish lime. The front really isn't very colorful though. I actually should have, probably should have made the title this color. But it's okay, it stands out. It doesn't really match the front, but it stands out. It's a lot brighter. I'd probably want to do this here too. And move this up a little bit. And like I said, this isn't really the greatest back cover. It should really flow together. Probably want to change this to, let's see, whatever font I'm using on the front. Squad 01. It's okay to have really big, bold text like this for a young adult, or even for a dystopian book. They usually have really big, bold fonts. Anyway, so I could go something like that, and it's not too bad. This lime is probably a little bit too bright, actually. I do like the color and the contrast, but it doesn't really match the front. That's a little bit better. So final things you might want to have is your website on the bottom. This is too close. I would make my own barcode, and the way I would do that is on my book cover design site, I have a free barcode generator that you can use, anybody can use, it's free. It'll save you 20 or 30 bucks. I use it for my book cover design. It's nice to have an online tool that's easy to use. The problem is I need an ISBN. I don't have an ISBN yet because I haven't published this book yet. But I would have to start the project on CreateSpace to get my free ISBN. But then I just put my ISBN number here and add a price if I want a price, and do this. Let me grab a fake ISBN. So here's an example. I would just do this. If I wanted to put the price for US pricing, I would go $12.95. Give me my barcode. This is going to give me an EPS and a PDF. And I just download it here in a zip file. I can open it up and drag these over to my folder. The EPS is the one you really want to use, but the EPS doesn't have anything behind it. It's transparent. Oops. But the quality will be a little better if you're resizing it. So as long as I make my little white box down there, then I can just put the ISBN right over the white box and then move it wherever I want. It's still a little bit crowded. This has got to come up a little bit. I'll probably need to change that color too. And then I'll move my author bio up a little bit. So like I was saying, I have an author bio here because some people aren't going to read the book, but they might just find the book somewhere and flip it over and take a look at it. And so if they do that, then they know who I am and what I look like, even if they don't read the book, which is kind of good just for building my author platform. That way, for example, if somebody, maybe they didn't read it, but they want to talk about it, or they want to say, hey, I saw this book the other day that looked really cool, they might say, oh, who was it by? And they'd say, oh, I have no idea, because they didn't see your author bio or your name. So putting something on the back and just saying whatever's interesting about you, whatever's most interesting about you that would appeal to the readers of this particular book. So this is actually not so great. It's kind of boring. If I wanted to really get attention, I'd want to add something a little bit stronger or funnier in the author bio. And then I might put a website, which is Urban Epics. So that's my website. Also, what usually goes on the cover is something like cover design by. It's useful to have just because it's pretty common. I normally, if you were self-publishing and you did your own book cover, I actually wouldn't put this on your book cover because it can make it seem kind of unprofessional. Usually when you have cover design by, you just use the name and not the design company or anything. The name of the designer. You don't have to have it, but it's common. So you kind of want your book to look like any normal book in the store. I usually make that kind of dark, so it's there, but it's not really obvious. Anyway, I wouldn't usually put your name. If you're the author of the book and you also did the design and the formatting and everything, that's usually not something you want to brag about unless you did a really fantastic job, in which case it's fine. But in most cases, it's better not to say that you designed your own book cover. Anyway, so I just made this and it took me 30 minutes or so. It's not perfect. I still need to play around with the spacing on the back. The spacing isn't so great back here, but I'm going to stop this video here because it's getting pretty long. And I basically have the right features that you would want to put on the back of your book cover.